What's going on, guys, and welcome to Who to Sign For. Now in this series I'm giving you my recommendations on what players to sign for a specific team in career mode. Before we go on, I will say that the signings you'll see aren't designed to be realistic, and that the player ratings and potentials of the players may vary depending on what database you're using and how they perform for you during the season. Obviously you don't have to follow all the tips. This is really just a set of guidelines to give you a hand if you're stuck for ideas and want some suggestions on what players you could sign for a certain club. This is mainly aimed at those of you out there who may be new to the game. I just need a little bit of advice, or for those of you out there who just want a few recommendations on what players to sign for a team that you may be using in career mode this year. And in today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys, well, I've just done Fenerbahce. It's only fair I do their great rivals Galatasaray next. Yes, Galatasaray, also of the fabulous city of Istanbul. Last season in the league had a really tough campaign, Galatasaray, though. They finished in 13th place in the Super League. It was a really tough season in Istanbul for Galatasaray, but even more reason to give them a go and try and rebuild their side. Now, they're a 3.5-star team. It's a team that definitely needs some work, no doubt about that. And it's a really old team as well. If you are looking for a rebuild in the Super League and trying to restore a bit of a fallen giant, if you will, Galatasaray are just a fantastic choice and definitely worth a go, because let me tell you, their team is old. It's a really old team that needs to get younger. Now, their starting budget, like their rivals Fenerbahce, is around £20 million. It's around the same transfer budget you've got with Fenerbahce and Galatasaray as well. And as a 3.5-star team, I have to say I was really stunned at the objectives. Now, obviously in the Super League, a 3.5-star / 4-star team would be considered one of the better teams, but it's still to win the Super League. I was surprised at that. I was really surprised. I would have thought the league objective in the first season would be to qualify for a European competition, but to win the Super League, very tough indeed. The Cup, however, got to reach the quarter-final, and you're also in the Europa League as well, with a really tough group. You've got both Marseille and Lazio in your Europa League group, so very tough to get through that as well. Now, Fenerbahce, as I mentioned a moment ago, they're a really old team. There's lots of players in their 30s that need to be shifted on. Several players in the deals are coming at the end of the year. I would only give out one new contract, though. That's to Elmas. This is a young 18-year-old holding midfielder. Lowly rated to begin with, but he's got 81 potential. Definitely extend this guy's contract. He's one of the good young talents you've got here with Galatasaray. But as for the transfer list, well, talk about your aging players in the shop window. Arda Turan, Ryan Babel, Faguli, all on the transfer list. And also, you would have noticed as well, right at the top, I do recommend selling him. Yes, it would be painful to do this because he's been at Galatasaray for over a decade now. I think he came from Lazio, didn't he? Fernando Muslera, the Uruguayan goalkeeper. He's been Galatasaray's number one for over a decade now. He's their club captain as well. But I would recommend selling him. Yeah, it will be very tough to do it because he's a club icon at Galatasaray. But despite the fact he's the highest rated player in the team at 80, despite the fact he's club captain, despite the fact he's been over there for a decade, he's in his mid-30s now. The fact of the matter is he's going to decline very quickly. You need to show no mercy and begin the rebuild process as soon as possible. So we're going to sell El Abdouli, our right back, and also we negotiated a deal with Bologna for Faguli, which was $3.25 million as well. You'll notice the problem with Fenerbahce is that the players are on really high... for Galatasaray. It's the same problem with Fenerbahce and Galatasaray, I should say. The players are on really high contracts. You know, Ryan Babel, for example, great example as he flashes on the screen here, is on $37.5 grand a week, and for a 34-year-old that's only 74 rated, it's really high contract, isn't it? And it means that you are going to struggle to sell these players because you might be able to negotiate a transfer fee, but the weekly wages mean there's not going to be that many clubs that are willing to pay those, quite frankly, inflated salaries. We sold Faguli to Bologna for $3.25 million, so he was sold to the Serie A there. But as you'll see with Kaya, I really struggle with this guy because he's only 66 rated. but he's on 11 grand a week. And I know 11 grand a week doesn't sound like a lot in modern football, and I guess it's not, but for a 66 rated player, it is a lot. Normally, 66 rated players, you can get them on about a grand a week sometimes. He's on 11 grand a week. It's a hugely inflated contract, and we unfortunately couldn't sell him, but Babel did go to Bologna in the end. But as for new signs with Galatasaray, well, like I said, this team has got to get younger. It's a really, really old team, and you got to start bringing in players who you can put them in the first team now, but they've also got good potential for the future. With Galatasaray, I would definitely say getting a new winger in their system is going to be key. Ryan Babel, we sold him. I would recommend this guy for the right-hand side every day of the week. It is Brian Ocampo. Now, this is a really talented young Uruguayan winger. His contract's up coming the end of the year, so you can get him for under the valuation. We spent 7.3 mil to get him, and this guy is already 74 rated, so as good as Ryan Babel right now, but just 22 years old with 83 potential as well. Yep, he's a really good South American talent. There's quite a few good bargain buys you can get in South America in this year's FIFA career mode. Ocampo is one of those guys. He's very, very quick. He's got great pace. His dribbling is fantastic. He's got 4-star skill, and he's got the flair trait as well. Ultimately, there's very little negative to this guy, and one of the things I really like about him too is he's got 80 crossing as well. Gomes is the veteran leading your line in Season 1. He's always been a really physical striker as well. If you can whip those balls in with Ocampo, he'll definitely win a few headers for you in the air. 80 crossing means you'll have an accurate cross on him too. So yeah, great player to bring in, and definitely my recommendation for a new starting winger. And I would recommend a new player for the midfield as well. Obviously, Galatasaray playing a 4-5-1. I recommend this guy in practically every single Who to Sign for. You're looking for a budget midfielder. He is my favourite budget player on the game. You know who it is. It is Bezoa of Vitesse. Now, he starts off ordinarily 76 rated. In this game, he'd grown a rating to 77 overall, but he's just 24 years old. He starts off as a centre half, but as I mentioned in every single Who to Sign for episode, if you want to keep him as a centre half, you can. But to me, he'd be wasted in the back line. His stats show that he is a much better player when going forward than he is in the back line. At 6 foot, with some okay defensive stats, he could be a nice little libero in your team. But in my opinion, with the high-low work rates, the really good passing, the good dribbling, the 4-star weak foot, put him further up the pitch. You know, centre half, yeah, he can do that job, but to me, he'd be much more effective as a central midfielder in this Galatasaray team. So I highly, highly recommend changing his position to centre mid and phasing him further up the pitch, playing in your 4-5-1. As you'll see, the Muslera deal did fall through. No surprise there. Again, he's on a very, very high salary, and also his male Sipe as well. This deal also falls through to St Johnstone. Again, the problem we have with Galatasaray, like we have with Fenerbahce, is the players are on really high contracts, so it's going to be hard to sell them to clubs because they might not be able to justify paying the salaries that Galatasaray and Fenerbahce currently are. But I would also recommend a new right back with Galatasaray as well. I think this guy is probably one of the best you can get for a team of Galatasaray stature. It is indeed Singo of Torino. Now, you've probably heard about this guy. He's a really good, young, talented fullback. 20 years old, 73 rated. I think you might be slightly better phased further up the pitch as a right midfielder, but in this team, I would have him as your right back. You can get him for around a valuation of 6 mil, which is an absolute steal. And the young Ivorian, as you can see, does have a low defensive work rate, but because of the development plans in FIFA, it's not a big deal. Put him on a defensive wing-back development plan, that will train up the reasonably low defensive stats, the reasonably low stamina and strength as well, and it will get the defensive work rate up from low to high. You got Bowie, who's a good young talented Cameroonian as well, but I'll personally start Singo at 73 rated. He's got 85 potential. Yeah, he'll grow to be one of the best right backs in European football in time. He's yours for 6 mil. Don't pass up the chance to get him. He'll be your starting right back for all the years you're in Istanbul. And as you'll see with Muslera, in the end, we did manage to sell him back to South America. He's going to Atletico Mineiro for 2.5 mil. So, yeah, finally managed to sell Muslera, the captain. Again, it'll be tough to do it, but you got to remember this guy, despite the fact he's 80 overall and one of the highest rated players in the team, he is going to decrease really quickly. You know, in his mid-30s, he's going to go down to around 77 overall after Season 1, and that's why I recommend selling in the first season, getting as much as you can. It's only 2.5 mil, but I'll take it, because that will soften the transfer fee you'll pay for the replacement. The guy to replace Muslera with is definitely this guy. Replace one South American talent with a Mexican goalkeeper, Carlos Acevedo. This is a great budget goalkeeper in FIFA Career Mode. You can get him for under the valuation because his contract's up coming the end of the year. We spent 8.5 mil and also swapped him Kaya as well to get Kaya's salary off the books too. And 77 overall, 25 years old. You'll look at him and think, well, hang on a minute. He's 3 ratings lower than Muslera. Why are you replacing the captain with someone worse? Well, you've got to remember what's going to happen during the season. Muslera is going to downgrade and get his overall down to around 77 overall. Acevedo is only 25 years old. He's a decade younger than Muslera. He's only going to get better, and come the end of season 1, they'll swap. Acevedo will be around 80 overall, Muslera will be around 77 overall, so it's all about building for the future. Acevedo as well, one of the things I really like about the guy is his reflex and diving stats are really high to begin with, so what you can do is put him on a sweeper keeper development plan to begin with, and that will see him have really quick growth, because it'll improve the positioning, which is a really underrated stat on goalkeepers obviously, and also the very low kicking stat he's got, so he'll grow very, very quickly in your Galatasaray system. So yeah, definitely my recommendation there for Muslera's long-term replacement. Bring in Acevedo, and you get 10 good years out of him as well, growing higher than Muslera with 81 potential as well. So as you'll see, we also sold Bayram as well, or we tried to sell Bayram, I should say, to Werder Bremen. This deal also fell through, and we had another rejected bid for our reserve goalkeeper too. Like I said, the problem is not the transfer fees, but it's the weekly wages these guys are on. So because I couldn't sell Bayram, our left-back, to bring in the one I wanted, I decided to swap him instead. Yeah, I would recommend a new left back with Galatasaray, and I think this guy will be a really good fit. I signed him in my Fenerbahce, who the signed for series, and if you're looking for young Turkish talent, this is one of the best you can get. It is Ridvan Yilmaz of Besiktas. He's valued at 3.4 mil. You can get him for around that fee, possibly even a little bit less as well. We spent 3 mil plus Bayram as well, who is obviously much, much older. Yilmaz, however, is just 20 years old, starts off 71 rated, so for the Super League, that's more than good enough to be a starter. He's on a reasonably low wage, all things considered, and he's also got 81 potential as well. Yeah, no doubt about it. I think this guy will be a fantastic fit for your new left back here with Galatasaray. Obviously, Patrick Van Aanholt will be your starter, but he's 30 years old, so in a year or two, he's going to start to decrease, and in a year or two, Yilmaz will be highly rated. So, in my opinion, I'll start Patrick Van Aanholt in the first season at 30 years old. You can probably get at least one more year out of him, but after that, I'd start Yilmaz as his replacement. In the first season, he's the understudy to Van Aanholt. From season 2 onwards, he'll be your starter with 81 potential. We finally sold Sipe, our reserve goalkeeper, to Barnsley's off to Oakwell. It took a long time to sell him, but finally we did. And also, you would have noticed with Galatasaray, it does feel like a bit of a retirement home with all of the old senior players here. One player that is there that you might have missed initially, Arda Turan. Do you remember him? Barcelona legend. Yes, Arda Turan. Definitely sell this guy in the first season. If you can't sell him, then swap him. We gave him to Arminia Bielefeld, plus 10 grand as well, because Turan right now, again, he's on a really high wage. He's only 69 overall nowadays, Arda Turan, in his 30s, on a really high wage. Just make sure you get his salary off the books, because he's on a contract which he doesn't really justify in FIFA career mode. So definitely swap if you can't sell. We did, and we bought in a player with much higher potential. Dogan, who's got 82 potential from Arminia Bielefeld. We gave him Arda Turan, and we got a player who's, yes, 10 ratings lower, but he's got a far higher ceiling with 82 potential as well. And the final signings I made with Galatasaray were another young Turkish talent here, Ömer Bayez. This is a young playmaker playing for VfB Stuttgart. He's alright, to be fair. Starting overall isn't too bad. You might give him a few minutes in the first couple of seasons, but it's all about the potential with this guy. Starting off 64 rated, 17 years old. Again, in the first season, he's not going to play that much. You might give him a few games here or there, but for the most part, it's all about the future. He's got 81 potential, so as the years go by, he can definitely start in your midfield trio, no doubt about that, with some really solid potential. You can either try and train his low defensive work rate up and try and make him a much better passer of the ball and phase him deeper, or if you plan to change your system one day, you can have him as your starting playmaker. Very decent passer of the ball though, 70 for both long pass and short pass already, and you might have noticed a standout stat as well. 17 years old, 64 overall, with 90 90 balance, absolutely fantastic. And as a playmaker, this guy in a few years' time would unlock defenses just like Mesut Ozil. Yeah, great young playmaker and definitely worth picking up. And the final signing I made was this guy right here, Ahmet Can Kaplan of Trabzonspor. He is just 18 years old, 66 overall, but we gave Ozturk, who is 29, I think he is, to Trabzonspor. He's around the same overall, but Kaplan's got far higher potential because he's far younger as well. Just 18 years old with 79 potential, and whilst again in the first season you might not use him at all, or certainly not much, but in the future with 79 potential he'll grow into be your third centre half in this team behind Markow and also the Scandinavian as well. Yep, really solid young centre half, and again it's all about the future with Galatasaray. It's such an old team. It's got to get younger, guys. It really does have to get younger. It's too old. Kaplan meets the criteria of good young Turkish talent. It's always nice to bring a good young talent from clubs that are in the same country as the players you're signing. Does that make sense? Like players of the same nationality as the club as well. The final thing I did was recall Akgun as well. You would have noticed I recalled a couple of players at the start of the episode as well, such as Lee and Dama, just because right now they're out on loan, but they're more than good enough to play a role in the first team as well. So with Galatasaray, as you'll see, all these sales here, most of the players being in their 30s, Muslera, Ryan Babel, Faguli as well, and of course we swapped a few players out, but the young players coming in, Acevedo's 24, yes, Bazoa is 24 as well, sorry, Acevedo's 25, but for the most part, it was all about getting good young Turkish talents, the likes of Yilmaz, the likes of Kaplan, the likes of Dogan, you know, really good young Turkish talent coming in. We improved the first 11, but most crucially with Galatasaray, we made it far younger. It needed to get younger, and it did as well. The question is, can we hit those objectives? Win the Super League, very tough indeed, and reach the quarter-final of the Europa League and also the Cup 2. Very tough objectives in Season 1 for this 3.5-star Galatasaray team. Well, as per usual, we'd simulate the end of the season, and as you can see, well, this was really disappointing. We had a cup semi-final with Trabzonspor, but as you'll notice, we sadly lost it and came up short. And in the Super League as well, I was not expecting to win the league. The Turkish Super League is so strong, man. It really is. You got Fenerbahce, Trabzonspor. They're the top two alongside Galatasaray. But don't forget Besiktas, Istanbul, Başakşehir as well, and Antalyaspor have got some good players too. It's a really good league, the Turkish Super League. There's some really strong teams in there, so it's going to be very tough to win the Super League in Season 1 with a 3.5-star team. In the end, we finished in 4th place, which is around what I'd expect from Galatasaray, really. That's not a bad finish in my book. It's Europa Conference League. Personally, I'd take that. And again, in the Turkish Cup, we reached the semi-finals, only losing in heartbreaking fashion to Trabzonspor. We made it for our Europa League group, though. We had Lazio, Marseille, and Östersund too, but unfortunately got knocked out by FC Midtjylland on penalties. They went all the way to the final, only to come up short to RB Leipzig. So, yeah, Europa League made it through the group as winners. That was really impressive, but unfortunately finished one round fewer in the last 16. So, I've got to say for Season 1, you'd look at that and say, well, you only hit your cup objective, maybe not a great season, but to me, I think the objectives are really tough in Season 1. This is a 3.5-star side that's really old. You know, this is a very aging team in Istanbul. It needs to get younger. It needs a rebuild. And 3.5-star with just 20 million to work with, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge in Season 1 with Galatasaray, but it's definitely worth a go. Look at Bazoa, man. Love him. 83 overall after the position change. But yeah, definitely give them a go, man. It's a really tough challenge in Season 1. And again, after last season's disappointing campaign in the league, finishing in 13th place, I've got to say, if you're looking for a rebuild, if you're looking for a team outside of the traditional top 5 European leagues, if you're looking to restore a bit of a fallen giant, I think Galatasaray meet all of that criteria. Lovely kits, lovely city of Istanbul, very strong rivalry with Fenerbahce, as we know, really strong and fierce rivalry too, but with some good young talents to bring in and develop. I definitely would say if you're looking for a rebuild and looking for your next project outside the top 5 European leagues, Galatasaray are a fantastic fit. They really, really are. You know, again, it's an aging team. It needs a major rebuild. And the objectives in Season 1, It's a tough challenge. You've got European football, but it's going to be hard to stay in the Europa League, let alone get into the Champions League for Season 2, when you're asked to win the Super League in Season 1 as a 3.5-star team. Very tough challenge, but definitely worth giving them a go. Really fun team to rebuild, no doubt about that. Trying to assemble a core for the future with Galatasaray. I highly recommend them for your next project outside of the top 5 European leagues. Galatasaray, top team to use. Give them a go. But that will end today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys. Big thank you for watching. Really hope you have enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed today's episode, then please do drop a like. Much love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you for next episode of Who to Sign For very soon.